Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the 30th episode of Tides of Lore. My name is Robert Silva. I am one half of your host team, joined as always by my good friend Tim. How are we doing this week, Tim?
Oh, tired, bro. It was AV weekend. I played so much Alterac Valley. 418,000 honor I got, which is almost 500,000. And I'm glad I get to take a break for a couple days. Holy crap, dude. Have you done it? This new form of Alterac Valley, the new meta?
I mean, no, I've not played since the, I think, original classic AV launched.
So the new meta, since people have gear, since there's no decay and there's a lot of rank 14s, 13s, or just people geared out of BWL, you just kill all the lieutenants, which gives you like 2,000 honor, and then you rush and you kill the last guy. And you you just cross paths. So you see the horde running past you in the middle, and then you never see him again. Like nobody PvP. And then at the last boss, a paladin or a hunter will kite his bodyguards, and then the boss resets, and then everyone just kills the boss. And it's like, dude, 6-minute games, 7-minute games.
So you're just rep farming.
And pretty much there's no PvP. It's the most brain dead way to get rank 14. But hey, it was AV weekend, so I had to do it.
There are WoW vets rolling in their grave right now.
I know, right? But you get like 4 or 5k honor, and dude, Horde are doing. I saw a 4-minute game, I think, which is insane.
I don't even think I could run across AV
yeah,
in a minute or in 4 minutes.
Yeah, it was crazy, dude. But yeah, that's what I've been doing, big dog. What about you?
Mount farming. Getting back to mount farming, a lot of that. Finished up a lot of the Dragonflight stuff. Looking to move into some Shadowlands stuff after I do a couple other things. I think I'm gonna go for Lore Master again. I went for Lore Master just before BFA launched, and then it got to a point where they added the BFA achievements and I couldn't get it, and that just kind of put me on a long period of not continuing my journey to get it. And now I'm gonna get back to it. I think I'm gonna finish up doing the Eastern Kingdoms. I already have done like Northrend and all the Cataclysm zones, and I think I was working backwards, so I was just going like Legion before. So I'm excited to do that.
They have now, you know how when we were playing Classic, they had that AI that read you the voices? They have that in retail now.
Mm-hmm.
So I even like going around and doing the old quests and having AI read it to me.
I'm just also excited to get like some of the older toys and stuff out like that I might have missed out on from some of these quests. So I'm excited to do that. I just barely passed 600 mounts like we were talking about before we started the show. I'm not quite caught you yet, but I'm coming. Oh, I'm coming.
You're 57 behind, my friend.
57 behind. That's chump change. But I'm also happy because, I mean, if they do ever add another mount achievement, which I think we should get one next expansion at least, right? I should hopefully just have that on lock for the first time.
Just log in and get it.
That's gonna feel very satisfying.
Yeah, that would be the first time for me as well if that happened.
Well, yeah, just mount farming. Been listening to some more audiobooks for the next week's episode that we're going to talk about. And yeah, mostly just that. We had a super massive episode, 2 hours long this previous week. So I was doing a lot of editing for that. It was a bit of a different format, so there was a lot more editing that went into it. But I actually really enjoyed that one. It was a lot of fun. So I hope you guys enjoyed that. That was for our 500 subscriber special. So thank you guys so much. We really appreciate that. Yeah, let's fucking go. You guys are crushing it on all sorts of platforms. We just barely passed 1,200 followers over on TikTok. We're about to pass 100 over on Spotify. So all your guys' support has been really awesome, and we do appreciate it. So thank you guys so much. But, I mean, just to continue off of that, last week, we didn't really discuss lore stuff. Tim, what did we talk about last week? You give the fans a reminder.
The zones and our ranking of gameplay and a little bit of lore as well for ranking system. You hate Hellfire, and I think Hellfire is amazing. That was the biggest.
You hate Shadowmoon, and I
away.
think it's just okay.
Well, I guess I thought about it more, and I'm like, okay, maybe I should have ranked it higher for lore because the Black Temple's there, and the Draenei had the Black Temple before, right? So there is lore, but honestly, man, I feel like you just don't really do much when you're over there, and I'm a big, like, I never played Warcraft, or I just played WoW, right? And I'm not big into the lore, and for me questing there in TBC, wasn't feeling it.
I think that's fair. I mean, there are even zones from like the Warcraft 2 era, like Auchindoun is from the Warcraft 2 era, and that feels pretty fucking cool place. So I mean, it's just I think it could be done better depending on people's preferences. And yeah, I thought that was a real fun episode. I hope you guys did enjoy that. Let us definitely know if you want more content like that, because I'm sure we'd be more than happy to occasionally take a pause from the fuller lore content to maybe have a bit more of a conversation with you guys. So let us know what you think in the comments. But yeah, that is pretty much all that we discussed last week. Also from last week, we did have a few comments, so we're just going to hop right into those. Starting off with Samuel Cavender 4693 saying, just caught up after binging the series. WoW lore is a guilty pleasure of mine, and Wrath Classic was awesome to experience, having been on a years-long hiatus from the game. Now I'm leveling a Shadow Priest in preparation for Mob Classic and raiding in War Within. Hell yeah, brother! I can't be bothered to raid in modern expansion. I can't really be bothered to raid at all. I'm not really a raider guy like that, but I think the most I ever did it was during Classic and then leading into TVC.
Yeah, I'm not a big raiding guy.
I do hear that Undermined is quite good.
I don't like relying on that many people and being in Discord with that many people, you know? I'm just kind of like, chill back, do like a 5-man Mythic Plus or PvP with the boys, you know?
Mm-hmm. See, and I think I feel very similarly, which, and I know a lot of people really love the aspect of WoW of having all these people come together to do this thing, and it is definitely a amazing experience, especially being how like long-standing the tradition basically is of it. But I'm a kind of a loner. I sit in Discord with my 3 to 5 friends most of the time, and outside of that, I'm not really trying to do content like that.
Yeah, with 25. Oh, yeah.
What? Oh, also to touch on Mob Classic, I'm actually really excited to do Mob Classic. I didn't have any excitement for Cata Classic. I'm gonna have to level a character through Cataclysm, aren't I? If I want to play Mob,
you'll buy a boost.
I'm not buying shit. I'll just level the mage.
That's what they want you to do.
Yeah, fucking. I'll be on.
Wait, you actually want to play? You want to play Mob, huh?
I do want to play, because I was thinking about it before. I was like, I don't really care about Mob. But then I did remember, I was like, but it's where you started. Like, think about being able to experience at least a fragment of that first time playing World of Warcraft. And I'm like, maybe.
I thought you started in Cata.
I started like late Cata into Mists. Because I remember I was still like playing on my friend's account during the Cata expansion. And then when I watched the Mist trailer is when I actually bought my own account and everything like that. So to have that experience, I think I gotta do it. So I'm a definitely.
Yeah, I'm not that hyped.
And I mean, I'm also making that monk, or the panda. I need the mount.
Oh yeah, you gotta get the mount for doing the starting area. Yep. Yeah, you gotta.
Maybe I'll convince a wave of our friends like you did with Classic to hop on Classic.
Oh Lord, yeah, I'll be in TBC.
Sounds good. To continue down our list of comments from last week, we have Piansamo Rules saying, in all honesty, I prefer Arthas killing Ner'zhul and taking control like in the Rise of the Lich King novel suggests. And I think this might be a controversial kind of topic to cover here, but I agree, actually. I know there aren't a ton of people who are maybe a fan of this, and they kind of prefer the more nuanced story of Arthas just being consumed by the Lich King, but I think I kind of like the idea of him just becoming so lost as a part of this like grand scheme of everything, especially because I mean eventually we learn in some future expansions that there was this greater entity trying to control him but couldn't. So it's just like, I don't know, man. I don't know, but I have come to appreciate the kind of the open-endedness of it. Like, as much as I would maybe prefer to have like a clear, like, yep, Arthas was not in control, or yep, Arthas was in control. I do kind of like the idea of it being open-ended enough for people to be like, well, I think this is because of this, and I think this because of this. But there are times where it does feel like it contradicts. So, but with that, moving into the last comment from last week, we did have Arez Jerry saying, thanks boys, I just had a baby, so I'm going to listen to this while cleaning the house when I have time. And congratulations, Arez Jerry, on your baby. You've been a long time commenter on our content, so we really appreciate having you here. And everyone tell Arez congratulations on his newborn.
Let's go. It's exciting.
Yeah, no, I do agree. And again, thank you so much for your long support of this channel. And again, just congratulations. and good luck. But with all of that wrapped up, we are now going to move into this week's episode, covering some of the prequel events that lead into the next expansion of World of Warcraft, the Cataclysm. So, starting this week, we're going to be covering the events of the Stormrage novel. Before we dive into today's story, don't forget to hit that like button, subscribe to Tides of Lore on YouTube, or if you're on Spotify, leave us a 5-star rating. It really helps the channel and ensures you won't miss a moment of this adventure. Now let's get started. So, fun fact, Sim, the axe of Cenarius, that axe that I'm like, it never comes back into the story, I don't know why. It does come back into the story. It's in this story. And one of our commenters did mention that before, but are you excited to see the axe of Cenarius back? Our boy Broxigar's weapon.
Yeah, it's not very warrior-like. I don't know. He's got a branch. I guess that's kind of cool.
It's an amazing weapon. I can't believe you hate this weapon. Anyway,
I want a weapon of steel, of might.
You'd fit in with that iron horde.
Oh, there we go.
Yeah, they had the right idea. Blackrock Foundry gear, all that.
Yeah, I remember I wore that on my warrior for a long time.
But with the orc Thura, who we did kind of mention is the niece of Broxigar, who all the way back in our very 5th episode of Tides of Lore, we discussed the War of the Ancients, where this time anomaly sends these people back in time to experience the War of the Ancients. And Broxigar was one of these people, and he gets this axe that's been blessed by Cenarius to cut through anything, and it's been manifested by Malfurion from the Emerald Dream, and apparently it's a really cool weapon. After all those events go down, they get sent back to the modern era. The axe is given to Broxigar's descendant of Thura, and with that being the case, she doesn't really know what happens to Broxigar, and she's been having these nightmares where she has these visions of Broxigar fighting off these demons, and she sees visions of him getting all wrapped up by these vines and betrayed by this druid figure that she can't seem to get out of her mind, and sees these thorns digging into Broxigar's body as she sees this druid betray Broxigar. So she goes on this warpath. She wakes up, she's like, these dreams are a vision from my ancestor. I have to find the person who killed Broxigar, and I have to kill him. So that's what she sets off to do. She gets the axe of Cenarius, she grabs a nice backpack full of rations, I'm sure, and she hits the road. And her goal is to kill this figure, who she only knows by name and his antlered head, Malfurion Stormrage.
That's not good. Malfurion's gonna wipe the floor with her.
Yeah, no.
Even with a branch.
Nice stick. You know I created that, right?
I bet he can protect himself from it as well.
But that is just the opening to this novel. This is where we swap over to mostly the characters that we're going to be focusing on. A lot of the people who operate in the Cenarian Circle, as well as the Night Elf's new home of Teldrassil, this new world tree that was planted by Fandral Staghelm off the coast of Kalimdor. So we come into the story. Tyrande Whisperwinds,
as the goddess wills,
praying, and she's been given these bad visions as well, that Malfurion's dying and in danger. And if we just want to quickly recap as well, just after the events of Warcraft 3, Malfurion just comatoses. He's been out of it for a while, and the only reason that he's even still alive at this point is because the priestesses of Elune are keeping his body nourished through prayer. So he's been comatose. The druids can't figure out why. The priestesses can't figure out why. And that is where Fandral, he calls all the Cenarian Circle, all the druids that operate within most of World of Warcraft, calls them all together, and he's like, guys, we need to save Malfurion, and I know how to save Malfurion. Our world tree back here, apparently it's sick. Cough, cough, sick. So we need to heal it, and I'm sure that once we heal it, it'll give us the key to saving Malfurion. And all the druids are like, yes, Archdruid. We trust you entirely, Archdruid. Because we have to remember, Fandral Staghelm is the man that takes over in terms of leadership after Malfurion goes into this coma over the Cenarian Circle. So, Fandral's like, but don't worry, guys. I have this artifact that was given to me by one of our circle, and it's going to help us to purify the tree and save Malfurion. And he produces the Idol of Remulos. Now, if we remember back to the Variant episode, the Idol of Remulos was what Broll Baremantle.
Kneel before the strength of the wild.
was given when he originally was fighting the demons during the Third War, and it was destroyed and ended up killing his daughter while it like exploded in this fell corruption, and ended up having him battle with the fell corruption within himself for many years before he eventually reclaims and purifies this idol. And this is actually the first time that we see Broll Baremantle really come back into the story as well. He is still doing some other stuff in the mangas that we didn't really talk about too much because some of their stuff is non-canon and some of it is, so I just decided to skip over most of it in general. But yeah, this is the first time we see Broll Baremantle come back into the story as one of these members of the Cenarian Circle. But Broll Baremantle sees this idol, and he has flashbacks to all the trauma that it's caused him, and he can't imagine it being a good thing for him, basically. But he's like, I trust you, Archdruid. I believe in you. And then he's like, cool, we're going to do this. And just as they're going to start doing this like massive druidic ritual on the tree, Tyrande shows up. And she's like, hey, Fandral, what you doing? He's like, nothing. And she's like, yeah, I don't believe that shit for a second. Anyway, bad news, everybody. Malfurion is dying. And they're like, well, he's been in a coma for a while. And then she's like, no, now he's like dying. We need to save him. And they're like, oh, shit. Okay. So, Broll Baremantle is then kind of brought to the side by Tyrande and one of her agents. And she's like, hey, I trust you over anyone else who's here. So I need you to go and see if you can find Malfurion. And he's like, okay, what do you want me to do? She's like, all right, I need you to go and steal that idol of Remulos from Fandral, and I need you to take it to the Emerald Dream because I think that'll be what helps us to get him out of wherever he's at. And he's like, yeah, cool, I'll do it. I trust you more than Fandral anyway. So he goes up to Fandral's little place, and he finds this artifact that I guess I should also say earlier, as Fandral was like, I'm going to use this artifact, one of the keepers, one of Cenarius's children appears, the keeper of Remulos himself, and he's like, don't touch that. Don't do that. And he's like, okay, I won't use it. And he's like, cool, thanks. And disappears. And that's why Broll's even able to get a hold of it, where he goes into Fandral's study and he finds this artifact and then steals it while he goes to make his way over to the area of Ashenvale, where they know is the thinnest veil between the Emerald Dream and the regular world of Azeroth.
Is Fandral, is he an idiot or is he evil?
A bit of both. Let's talk about it. So, as Fandral is presiding over this druidic convocation where he's trying to heal this world tree, you get a scene from his perspective where he begins to see a vision of his deceased son, Valstan, who we mentioned got ripped in half at the gates of Ahn'Qiraj by the Qiraji. So he's kind of just going off the deep end. He thinks that he's seeing his son, and he's definitely not entirely there at the moment, but it doesn't seem to be common knowledge to everybody, at least not yet. How did this man get the job? Like, I think about this, and I'm like, sure, Malfurion maybe was disposed, so you couldn't have him be leader, but, like, why was the next guy up the guy that they're like, isn't this the guy that, like, planted all those world trees when he shouldn't have and stuff like that? Like, how the hell do you get the job?
That's what I'm trying to piece together right now. Like, why is this guy in charge of everything?
I guess he's old. He's been around for a long time. We've seen him, I think, all the way back to when the Satyr War and whatnot happened. So, like, 5,000
Well, and he's
years.
Hallucinating now?
Yeah, he's tripping balls.
And so that's not good. You probably don't want your leader hallucinating.
Yep. So, plagued by these reoccurring visions of his son that he had lost, Broll kind of realizes this. There's another one of these druids who we briefly mentioned during the variant storyline, Hamel Rune Totem, who is one of the few Horde side, like he's a Tauren, so he's one of the few kind of Horde side members that we know of in the Cenarian Circle. He's there as well. He kind of recognizes this. So these lines kind of start getting drawn in the sand of like the group that is looking to save Malfurion on their own and the Cenarian Circle that is working for Fandral. And that's when Tyrande calls up the leader of her guard, this young, well, no longer young girl, by the name of Chandris Feathermoon, who we know from all the way back during the War of the Ancients is basically Tyrande and Malfurion's adoptive daughter. In this book, a lot of the time they kind of, like, they don't say daughter directly, but there is, like, even a specific scene at the end of this where Malfurion says, like, he looks at Chandris in a way that only a father looks at a daughter. So, I personally just, I'm calling it. She's basically their adopted kid. But she's very, like, military oriented. She's very, like, duty before everything. Like, even when she's interacting with these people that would essentially be her parents, like Tyrande and like Malfurion, she's very soldierly, very, like, militaristic in a way, because she is the leader of the Sentinels, and she is basically the leading commander over the main military force of the Night Elven people. So that's a lot of her attitude. And Tyrande's like, hey, Chandris, we need somebody to go with Broll Baremantle and help guide him through the Emerald Dream to find Malfurion. And she's like, okay, of course, I will do that for you. And Tyrande's like, oh, no, I'm actually telling you this just to buy me time because I'm actually the one that's going. And she's like, the fuck do you mean? Who's going to lead Darnassus while you're gone? And she's like, handle it. Good luck. So she dips out. She flies off on a hippogriff, which I did think was a really interesting little tidbit that this story gives us, is that the hippogriffs in WoW are, like, super intelligent. Like, they say that you can't just ride a hippogriff. You have to befriend a hippogriff to even be able to ride it, as they're, like, these super intelligent creatures. So I thought that was just a fun little tidbit that we get from this story. But moving on, you cut to deep within the Emerald Dream, where you see Malfurion Stormrage, who, at this time, is trapped in this grotesque living prison where he's been transformed into this half malformed, gnarled tree, where these, like, bark and roots are, like, twisting his body in all sorts of unnatural ways, and he has no mouth, and he's only been allowed eyes because the person that's doing all this torture wants him to see all of this happening to his body as he's being wrenched in unnatural positions.
I think there's a Nightmare Lord. I think you fight in Legion.
Yep. Xavius.
The master gave me many gifts.
Xavius, yeah, and he's like this fat, like, tree guy, demon.
So we do come to find that this is all being done and inhibiting Malfurion's power by this entity known as the Nightmare Lord that, yes, is Xavius, who, again, all the way back to all of this book is very much a sequel to a lot of the stuff that happens in War of the Ancients. Because, I mean, you get the Axis Narius back, you get certain characters back that you haven't really seen since then, like Tyrande and Malfurion, and you get Xavius back, who, if we remember, was the, like, main assistant dude to Queen Ajara. And after all of their lands of Zinajari get sent to the bottom of the ocean, and I assume she makes her deal with the old god Nazoth, he somehow gets out of his tree that he's been trapped in down there and begins to operate this land that is corrupting the Emerald Dream known as the Emerald Nightmare. But yeah, so that's what Malfurion's up to. He's dealing with every scene that you get during most of this novel while he's in the Emerald Nightmare is literally just them describing how he's being fucked up by this tree, how it's wrenching him in some unnatural position and, like, making his knees bend backwards and some shit. And I'm just like, this is terrible. Like, this is horrible. Then I think about it and I'm like, Malfurion did this to Xavius.
Oh, he's just getting him back.
He's like, get back, bro.
Yeah, I mean, I get it.
Yep. So back in Kalimdor, you have Thura, who's pressing forward with her enchanted axe, and she doesn't really necessarily know what's driving her, but she just knows he's a night elf, so I'm going to go to night elf territory. And as this is happening, she makes her way into Ashenvale, where we mentioned is that kind of area where the Emerald Dream and reality are one of the thinnest because of those great trees in that Emerald Gateway where we kind of talked about some of those dragons. But to touch on some of the other world, there's a problem going on in pretty much every part of the world. There is this unnatural slumber where a bunch of the population of the world are all just going to sleep and not waking up. And you see the
Druids only or everyone?
Everyone. So you see there's like a lieutenant or something like that who protects Goldshire, and he works for the Stormwind military, and he has a nightmare about encountering all these kobolds in a cave and getting stuck with them, and then them turning undead and fighting them as Scourge. And then you come to realize in the story that all of these people are asleep, and they're also stuck in these nightmares. And it is just pretty much everybody everywhere. And there's this mist that is just creeping in to all parts of Azeroth as all of these people from Orgrimmar to Stormwind and the Undercity all begin to just fall asleep, which is also kind of crazy thing, because let me remind people, undead don't need to sleep. So the fact that they are falling asleep is concerning. But as
They just don't wake up.
Yep.
Or what?
I mean, that is how it just starts in the story, is that they're just the sleepers and they're not waking up, and the ranks are getting thin because of that. But then this plague of sleep spreads, and more than just their minds are at risk, and some of these victims begin to hop up and move as if they're puppeteered by something else. Basically, they become violent little zombies of sleep, and they start just speaking in whispered chants as they begin to attack the non-sleepwalkers. So that is what the info that we get from all the rest of Azeroth as this is beginning. And that's when you go back to Fandral, who goes back to his little hut, and he's like, one of these motherfuckers just robbed me. And he goes back to all the druids, and he looks around, and he's like, where the fuck is Broll?
Sad enough.
And then, so he begins to sow this distrust, and he eventually will see this with the other druids, that he kind of begins to plant seeds that Broll is betraying all of them and stealing from the group.
But no one tries to get him out of leadership. They're all just
they're all on board. So Tyrande meets up with Broll in this area just off the coast of Teldrassil, an area known as Darkshore, specifically this town known as Aberdeen. And as they begin to make their way into Aberdeen, they look down. And, I mean, Brawl's already on the ground, but he sees this hippogriff approaching, and he's like, that must be Chandris, because, again, he assumed it would be Chandris and not Tyrande as well. And they begin to talk about how there's this unnatural fog that is just creeping all around Aberdeen, and it's eerily silent, that there's not even animals or bugs in the world making noise. And they meet up with each other, and they're like, hey, what the fuck's going on with this? And that's when the mist kind of begins to shroud over them, and they begin having these visions of these shadowy tendrils that bust forth from the ground, and these illusions of attackers that are rushing at them as they're fighting off, literally the embodiments of the nightmare that appear before them. Usually it's their own, traumas that appear before them. So, Tyrande sees the satyr, and Tyrande sees the Naga and Queen Ajara, and Broll sees his daughter and sees stuff like that. So that is kind of what's going on with a lot of these dreamers, as they're beginning to see basically heavy hallucinations of people in their life that plays on their trauma.
It reminds me of that Batman movie, The Scarecrow.
Yeah,
gives me that kind of vibes.
But just as all of this is happening there, and they're in this fight, this young human appears in this blaze of emerald right before them. And with a single act, he touches them, and they all just disappear away. And they're like, what the hell just happened? And they look down, and this human is unconscious, and his body has this faint emerald light all around him. And Tyrande and Broll are like, what the fuck is that? Because there aren't really, human druids, and to have this possession of magic that seems to radiate with magic from the Emerald Dream, they're like, what is wrong with this guy? So they tend to him, and they look to figure out more about what's going on with his dream magic, and they kind of put it together, or at least Tyrande's the light of Elune has guided us to this person because he is probably the key to navigating the dream. And that's when Broll looks up, and he sees this massive green dragon flying overhead. And it's flying low and erratically through the sky. So they're like, oh shit, it could be one of those crazy fucked up dragons. We should hide. So they all go to hide, try and avoid it for now at least. And eventually this human wakes up from his unconscious state, and he looks to them, and he's like, hey, I'm a man by the name of Lucan Foxblood, and I used to be a cartographer's apprentice, but the world's going to shit, so I started running away while I was in the middle of an operation. And they're like, cool, do you know about your ability to teleport? And he's like, not really, but just to make a long story short and not hold off on you guys, Lucan Foxblood, somehow, some way, was a human born of the Emerald Dream. He basically hatched from a green dragon egg, and then I would assume just teleported out. We later learned that Ysera, who is the leader of the dream, knew about his existence and was like, could be a fun experiment. We'll see how it goes. But it doesn't make it too clear about exactly what happened to him as a baby. Did he just disappear to the real world? Was he ever... Who took care of this kid? Anyway.
Wait. So is he a dragon then? And he just has a human aspect?
They just say he's a human.
But he came out of an egg.
Right?
Maybe he's just in aspect form, because they all have an aspect form.
He just hasn't learned
He's just never gone into dragon form?
My God,
That's
bro.
crazy.
This is an anime plotline waiting to happen.
And then he can turn into a dragon at any moment. He just needs to find his inner dragon. Yeah.
So he's like this living anomaly who can go between Azeroth and the Emerald Dream basically at will, but he can't really control it very well. So he, once again, they approach him and they're like, cool, do you think you can teleport us to where Malfurion Stormrage is? And he's like, I guess I can try. And he teleports them, and they don't go to Malfurion Stormrage. As a matter of fact, they get teleported into this hidden cave entrance where they spark up the light of a loon, and there's this massive dragon in front of them. One of those ones that we said fell to corruption, Aranicus? Yeah, that's the one. We do get a lot of information about this dragon of Aranicus, who used to be the consort to Ysera. Basically, he used to be a baby daddy until he fell to the corruption of the nightmare. And then even after the events of like Classic, where we, I guess, whoop his ass so hard that we free him from the nightmare somewhat, he still just lived with so much shame that he never went back to the Green Dragon flight.
Is this one of the world bosses?
Aranicus was the dragon that you would find when you go into the Sunken Temple. You'll find the shade of Aranicus.
Okay, that's cool.
Yep. So Tyrande and Broll basically see this green dragon, and they're like, hey, the Emerald Dream's in trouble. You need to stop moping and do your fucking job and go help Ysera and everyone in the dream right now. And he's just like, nah, the dream is lost. Nothing can stand against the nightmare. You guys are on your own. So after Aranicus kind of calms down from them surprising him, the dragon would then tell them basically like, yeah, that human was definitely born from a dragon egg, so he's a fucking freak. But then that's where you kind of gain this term that Lucan is known as a dreamborn. So I guess that might be implies that there are other ones, though they seem to indicate that he's more of a super special figure. Though I will also say he never appears outside of the story after this. He doesn't have an in-game model.
Almost like a dragonborn in the Skyrim.
But outside the cave, the wind shifts and Thura arrives. She's like, hey, the visions have driven me to this place. And she tracks the scent of Malfurion's allies into this cave. She's like, ah, yes, that's Tyrande. And I guess she could see Broll and be like, he's a druid, get his ass. But she waits till Lucan steps outside and then strikes him. And as everyone else is like, what the hell is going on? Thura is just like, hey guys, I'm here to kill Malfurion Stormrage, and I need you guys to tell me how to get there. And Tyrande and Broll and everybody are like, bro, we're trying to figure out the same thing. And in that moment, Lucan's powers activate on accident, and he teleports away with Thura into the Emerald Dream. Thank you for tuning in to Tides of Lore. If you're enjoying the story, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share with your fellow adventurers. Your support makes all the difference. Thank you. Back inside the cave, all three of them, including the dragon, are like, Jesus Christ, what is even going on at this point? And basically at this point, Broll turns to Aranicus and is like, hey, you need to show us how to get into the dream, like, right now, because as you can see, shit's getting real. The orcs are involved. This random dude is involved, and no more moping around. Come on now. And Aranicus is like, oh, fine, I guess. He's a little mopester through most of this.
A lot of green dragons are sad.
It's a tough existence, bro.
Seems like a normal thing. Just life.
Mm-hmm. Just live forever.
Is there a correlation with life dragons and sadness?
Live forever in this realm that seemingly never changes and is idyllic as hell, but, you know, just never changing. Until now. But now committed to the cause, Aranicus is like, hop on. We're going to fly on over to that place in Ashenvale, and we're just going to hop on through. And they're like, cool, sounds good. And as they begin to fly over, they land, and they look around, and it's this, like, hollowed sanctuary. It's been completely twisted by this nightmare corruption that's beginning to pour out of the Emerald Dream and into the real world. And there is this Ancient of War, which I don't think we've ever discussed before, but they're essentially these the Ents. Think Ents from Lord of the Rings, but thicker, like girthier.
Whoa.
Yeah.
Wait, what?
Whole pause.
I mean, they're cool. They're pretty much exactly like the Lord of the Ring Ents. Yeah, except maybe more bush.
But yeah. So there's this one by the name of Gnarl. And they're like, hey, Gnarl, what's up? And Gnarl's like, hey, this nightmare is becoming a real problem. And then he sees Aranicus. And the last time he saw Aranicus, he's like, you fell to the nightmare. So he's like, put him up, dragon. And the dragon's like, I'm not here to fight you. Come on now, let's chill out. And Tyrande casts a magical spell and calms everybody down. And they're like, come on, we have to focus. Malfurion, Nightmare, not time to fight dragons right now. And Gnarl is just like, fine, I suppose. So he's like, come on through the portal and check out just how fucked up it is in there. And they're like, all right, cool. And they see 2 of those other corrupted green dragons. You remember those world bosses? Yeah, we're talking this time about Lethon and Emerus. And these ones, well, they're still fully in the Nightmare sauce. They didn't break free at all, and they still serve the Nightmare Lord. I wouldn't say willingly, but they seem pretty happy about it, at least in their mind-controlled states.
They're pretty eccentric to kill. So you got 2 world bosses at once ready to go?
Oh, yeah. And both those world bosses are like, hope you brought 60 men.
Maybe even more, dude. It was 40 for Raid Group.
Got some method members down there. But they see these dragons. All of this mist that's around them begins to twist into these satyrs and these tainted dryads and all these forest spirits that once existed here happily. Again, very not happy again. It's hard to describe the nightmare, but I think the name itself kind of gives you the right impression of the sorts of things that you'd be seeing. Think, Nightmare Forest from a horror slasher film, but just like on steroids where it's actually trying to eat you as well.
I mean, you see a glimpse of this in Legion when you're going... You fight Cenarius, he's mind controlled by Xavius, and then you see the thorns and stuff twisting. So I think I'm imagining that.
Yep, and I'm trying to give a vision for the people who maybe don't play WoW, but that is, for the most part, lots of red, lots of black, thorns, violence, sadness. They describe in the book a lot of bugs all over the ground. I don't think you really see this in the game, but all these carrion bugs, so centipedes and things that eat the dead and decaying just everywhere on the ground. And that's kind of disturbing because also when they crush them, they're fragments of these bugs would turn into more bugs. It's a fucked up place to be for sure. Definitely an old god paradise. But as they're fighting with all of these forest spirits and Lethon and Emerus and all this shit that's going on, the sky erupts into flames as this massive red dragon comes into the picture of them and arrives with a bunch of other red dragons, and they begin to push away all of the nightmare with this purifying flame of the dragons of life. And they're like, oh shit, that's Alexstrasza, the aspect of the red dragonfly.
I bring life and hope.
And she's like, yes, I'm here to help my sister. We have to remember that out in Azeroth, everything's getting fucked up too. So she's like, I'm here to protect life, doing my thing, doing my job. And that's actually kind of funny because then she also does look to Irenicus and she's like, hey, I understand that you're kind of going through some stuff, but you also have to do your job. And he's just like, I guess.
And that's all it takes is her showing up, and then they just snap out of it.
Hey, man. Irenicus saw that dragonflight model. Couldn't help himself.
Yeah, they just simp in. Or...
I don't blame. I mean, again, we have to remember he, at one point, was basically the right-hand man to Ysera. So it does make sense that he struggles with this, but having more people being like, hey, stop struggling, focus, makes sense. So as all of this goes on, eventually the path is clear. So they head on through and they step through this portal. And as they arrive, instead of being greeted by the endless blue sky and the fairy dragons flying around in the Emerald Dream most druids would experience before, it is just this twisted hellscape of thorns and branches and these black sky above them. And immediately, as soon as they arrive in the nightmare, they look around and they can't see shit because there's mist literally everywhere. But that is kind of where it cuts back to Malfurion, and you see him once again getting twisted by Xavius, and Xavius is like, haha, you remember me, you son of a bitch? You remember the tree, you son of a bitch? And he's like, I remember the tree. He actually doesn't have a mouth, which is, you hear it in his mind, he screams out in agony. I'm like, you don't have a mouth, you can't scream. But yeah, that's mostly where you just check in with him, and he basically is like, the people are trying to come save you, but they won't make it. And that's what Malfurion's up to. Thanks, Malfurion. Back to everybody else. Tyrande, Broll, Irenicus, all in the Emerald Dream. They begin to make their way through this area when eventually they encounter a bunch of these dream denizens that have fallen asleep in the real world and are now walking the Emerald Dream, or the Emerald Nightmare rather, and they try and those dream people try and kill them. So they fight them. And then this ancient of war by the name of Aerie shows up. And with him are a bunch of these dryads and treants and druids that are also trying to fight the nightmare spread. And they show up to save everybody once again. And this is kind of the people on the inside of the dream who are fighting against it, while Alex Strauss is on the outside of the dream fighting against it. So they continue to plan how they're going to make their way through the nightmare. And they think the best path to follow in this place that has no paths to follow would be to follow basically the faint magical residue of the dream left behind by Lucan Foxblood. The Dreamborn have this nature that leaves this signature on the dream, so we can follow that. So Aranicus and Aerie, this ancient of war, are like, cool, that way. And the group begins to make their way over. And they come upon Lucan, and they come upon Thura. And Thura is just like, I know you guys know where Malfurion is. I don't know where you took me, but show me where he's at, or I'm going to kill this random no-name character, basically. And Lucan's like, please, I have a name. And the rest of the group's like, again, we're trying to find Malfurion too. And she's like, you guys are of no help. So she lets Lucan go, and she runs off into this nightmare forest alone to go find Malfurion. Good luck, Thura. So the rest of the group looks to reunite at this area that is basically the home base in the Emerald Dream. Like, they say it's the only actual structure within the Emerald Dream, and it's where the green dragonflight mostly kicks it to hang out, this area known as the Eye of Ysera, which we actually do see the Eye of Ysera in Midrasil in the Dragonflight expansion. It's that kind of dragon hub off the northeast coast area. That's the Eye of Ysera. They make it sound significantly less cool in the book, and then I went there in game and I was like, this could have been described way better.
I don't even know if I've been there. That sounds cool.
Had to have.
I'm gonna fly by.
Done the quest, but yes. Anyway, as they arrive, blighted crater, pulsing with rot, trees around it all growing inward like these grasping claws as this mist just swirls around. And they're like, I think Malfurion's probably in there. Definitely where Xavius' influence seems to be the strongest. And that's when that Ancient of War Aerie tells him, he's like, yeah, basically everyone that's gone into that area have not come back. So Tyrande's like, that's the spot. All right.
By herself?
Yeah, kind of. I mean, Broll eventually goes to chase after her. But through most of this, she's like, we don't have time to talk. It's go time.
Yeah, she a ride or die.
What's actually kind of funny is that a lot of this novel is about the strife in Malfurion and Tyrande's relationship. Like, this is the first time I think I get the info from Tyrande's perspective that she holds a degree of resentment towards Malfurion for constantly going off into the dream.
Without her.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly.
Leaving her with Sean.
Well, no, leaving her to literally lead the Night Elven people alone, right? So
at least he ain't meeting with other women that we know of.
Meeting with dragon aspects
could
over
be
in
doing
the dream.
that.
No.
Hey, we don't know what he does.
Yeah, Malfurion's in this comatose state, but for some reason, he bricked up. What's that about? But back in the real world, the Moonglade, this basically land that has symbolized the Druid people for countless ages, also begins to have everybody in it fall into a soundless sleep. And it's where we also begin to get more visuals about what's going on in other parts of the world, because then we cut to Stormwind and we see Varian Wrynn standing over Anduin, who has been stuck in a deep slumber, and all he is whispering strange phrases throughout his sleep. As this plague begins to spread further and further, we see Archmage Crassus, that red dragon that went back in the War of the Ancients as well and has done a ton of other things. He's in a deep sleep as well, going through what I can only assume to be is some pretty fucked up nightmares considering how long he's lived. You even get a scene of Sylvanas in the Undercity basically talking to... see, and this is the part that really confused me as well, because in this dream, it cuts to Sylvanas, right? And she's yelling at Very Mathras, and she's like, what do you mean everyone's sleeping? Like, we're forsaken. We don't need to sleep. Like, you're crazy. And basically he is talking to her and he's like, no, it's a really simple spell. Actually, we could do it if we wanted to. And then she begins to have this nightmare where all of her people turn on her, and then they hold her down, and Arthas walks through the door and turns, like, for 1 second, she has like this living flesh again, and before he rips it away from her, turning into a banshee, and he's like, and I'll do it as many times as it takes. And I just thought it was really cool to be able to see nightmares of all these different people from across Azeroth. I think we even get one from like Bane where he sees Thunderbluff just in flames and the people killing each other.
I mean, that happens, doesn't it?
I mean, we'll talk about that in a little bit. But yes, so all across the world, the nightmare is just beginning to take people left and right, even super powerful mages, even some of the most important figures in the world. And with Lucan now reunited with Tyrande and Broll, he reveals that through this brief time with Thura, he learned that she is dangerously close to finding Malfurion's exact location, somehow. And this is, again, where hearing this, Tyrande's like, no time to talk, go! So she runs off in the distance, driven by this fear that her beloved is going to be chopped into tiny pieces by the Axis Inarius. And as Broll and Lucan are attempting to follow her through this nightmare fog of just crazy illusions and this choking feeling that comes from being in the fog itself, they begin to get separated from Tyrande, where her path leads her towards this kind of symbolic heart of the nightmare, right? Like, so when they're there, they'll constantly see buildings and stuff that don't exist. But Tyrande, for whatever reason, it's the right way to go. So that is just something to know about. And she gets ensnared by these devastating psychic assaults where she has these hallucinatory visions, like I mentioned, of Queen Azshara in this ruined palace, where she's basically like, if you remember, Queen Azshara took Tyrande prisoner, and originally she was like, you could be one of my handmaidens, like, you're pretty enough. And Tyrande's like, I'd rather die, to be honest. So she has visions of this event happening over again, and Queen Azshara essentially being like, oh, come on, you'll be just like me. And that's kind of one of these other side plots of it, of Tyrande constantly trying to be the leader that Azshara wasn't, and trying to be champion of the people and care about all the people in her service, as opposed to just the highborn, like Queen Azshara. She has this like fear basically of becoming like Azshara.
So she wants to be an actual good leader and not just succumb to corruption.
Yeah, to power.
Interesting.
Indeed. But Tyrande calls upon Elune. She's casting all these lunar bolts, pachow, using this lunar glaive to chop everything in half. Honestly, this book, it makes Tyrande fucking awesome. She is just slaughtering, well, visions, basically. But nonetheless, it sounds cool. It's described cool. Where eventually she does manage to push away, shattering all these illusions of Azshara and everything like that. And though she's victorious, she is exhausted, and she passes out on the floor, entangled by these dark vines. Elsewhere in the dream, you have Thura, where it says that it is this area that is just soaked in blood, where the twisted glade turns into this monstrous oak-like prison, and in front of her, she sees Malfurion Stormrage. And he is heavily guarded by these nightmare satyrs that we've kind of mentioned exist. And so she's like, if you guys think that that's going to stop me from fucking that tree guy up, you're wrong. I don't know how she even recognized him, but good on her. Got some good eyes. So she has this grim determination to, well, I'm still going to kill him. And as she begins to make her way through these satyrs, chopping with this enchanted axe and ripping through all of them, she comes in front of Malfurion. Broll find Tyrande unconscious on the ground in front of them. They can sense that Thura has managed to reach Malfurion's little chamber. And the nightmare is not pleased with that, as they can basically feel the energies of it begin to recoil inwards towards this area that they're holding Malfurion at. And eventually, Tyrande wakes up, and she's like, what's going on? They're like, well, pretty sure that she found Malfurion. And she's like, son of a bitch. And they're like, yeah, we think that it's inside that super gnarled great tree that's over there. And they're like, well, let's go get him. So they rush over, and they find Thura standing in front of Malfurion, where Thura says to Malfurion, she's like, I will give you one last opportunity to repent for what you did to Broxagar before I kill you. And again, Malfurion doesn't have a mouth, so even if he wanted to, he couldn't. And she's like, so be it then. Be a bitch about it. And she goes to swing this axe, and just as she's about to swing this axe, she gets intercepted by Tyrande. And Tyrande basically pleads with her and begins to battle with her, declaring, like, your visions are lies. Malfurion didn't betray Broxagar. They were friends. Like, he made that axe that you're holding. And she's like, y'all are tripping. And eventually she manages to wrestle this exhausted Tyrande off of her. And she's like, nah, I'm going to fulfill this blood oath that I made to my I think it's grand uncle, great uncle, something like that. Regardless, to my ancestor. And she takes the axe and she swings it deep into the tree of Malfurion. And this is actually exactly what he wanted. You come to find out, Malfurion had actually been feeding her dreams specifically that he was this villain because he wanted her to bring this axe to the Emerald Dream and use this blessed weapon that was created of the dream and of the real world by Cenarius and himself to see if that would be a way for him to break free. And as this axe collides with his body, he reshapes into our glorious king that he normally is, with his antlers and his bird wings, and his Malfurion the goat status appears and breaks free of the Nightmare Lord's control.
I still don't like druids, but that's a pretty cool move that he did. Not gonna lie.
Yep. And after he manages to break free, he's like, and not only that, I also put a call out, and overhead, these green dragons fly over, clearing out all of this mist around them as you see the green aspect herself, Ysera.
I dream and the world trembles.
Flying among them, drawn to the energy of this prison being broken. And, well, hope is unfortunately short-lived as Ysera is then circling above, the Nightmare Lord springs his trap, and he's like, well, actually, I knew that you were going to do that because the whole plan that I had was to actually capture her. And he imprisons Ysera, managing to catch her with some sort of super spoopy nightmare magic.
Is this from Legion? Is this the story I know from Legion?
No, that is kind of a sequel to a lot of what this is setting up.
She gets corrupted a lot, is what I'm noticing.
Again, Green Dragon's got it tough, man. They're like, yeah, take care of this realm. What do we know about it? I don't know. Figure it out.
How I get trained at work.
It's called on-the-job training, Ysera. But yes, as she is captured and Xavius reveals himself being like, yes, it was all my plan to capture the green aspect, and with her power, siphoning it, the nightmare will be unstoppable. And as that happens, the dream trembles and the nightmare intensifies. Aranicus and Eri, the green dragon, and that Ancient of War arrive, and they are there just in time to witness Ysera get taken away. And in that moment, Aranicus feels him once again failing to protect Ysera, failing to protect the dream, and he's like, no. And as the chaos escalates, a rift tear opens between the Emerald Dream, and the entire group is swept through, find themselves now in this secluded glade within. They do see that the dream's corruption has already seeped into this area of the world, but they don't really know where it is. And Thura also begins to kind of have a midlife crisis, because she's like, was I just a pawn for the nightmare to do all of this? And she's like, what would Broxigard think? I'm an idiot. But in the Emerald Dream, Xavius begins to fully manifest all of his power, now having the aspect of the dream herself corrupted within it. He begins to create this grotesque monument of the old god's influence, where these walls breathe and these roots from these trees drip blood out of them. And at this center throne sits the Nightmare Lord himself, no longer merely this satyr, but now, like Tim kind of mentioned earlier, this twisted abomination between satyr and tree man and all sorts of weird shit, that he is now ruling from this citadel of corruption, as outside the green dragonflight falters and the nightmare begins to spread its reach into the cities of Stormwind and Orgrimmar and take over all of Azeroth. And that's actually where we're going to call today's story. We're going to break this one up into our next two-parter because we still have a whole lot of book to get through. So we're going to talk about the climactic remainder of the Stormrage story next week as we, talk about the remaining battle with the Nightmare that leads into Malfurion's return to the stage of the World of Warcraft game. Do you have any questions or comments?
Dude, the Orgrimmar and Stormwind under Nightmare, it gives me horrific visions vibes.
Oh, yeah.
That are out right now.
Dude, exactly. You know what's actually kind of frustrating to me when I think about it is that they do also describe like Undercity falling into like this, and they describe like Thunderbluff falling into this. With these remastered visions, they could have given me new cities. Whatever.
Oh, yeah.
I mean,
it would be sick
and
to go to new cities. Yeah,
and it's an Azoth and everything. It would have made total sense to be like, have Chromie pop up on a little top card, just being like, "This is from a timeline where the the fucking Emerald Nightmare completely spread over Azeroth.
Well, I mean, Darnassus is already burned down. I don't know. Can it get much worse than that?
I guess I will say, for some clarity, the Druids of Darnassus and a lot of the Night Elves don't really know what's going on yet because, like, Fandral was kind of purposefully keeping... That's why he kind of called all of them out there to keep them away from the rest of Azeroth while all this was going on so that they could focus on something else instead of being like, hey, I think the dream's fucked up, guys. So, things in Darnassus are... okay, certainly compared to the rest of the world, good.
I'm excited to find out what happens to Orgrimmar and Stormwind, or really the world.
We got the GOAT back, Malfurion. It's time for him to kick some ass and take some names and show off why he's the #1 hero in all of Azeroth. But that will be for next time. If you guys did make it this far, please make sure to give us a like or a comment, 5 stars on Spotify, whatever you guys want to do. We appreciate it. And we will see you guys for the remainder of the story next week. Thank you so much for making it to the end of this episode. Your guys' support truly means the world to us. If you're interested in hearing more, we have our full show on YouTube and Spotify, new episodes dropping every Tuesday. I also want to take this moment to give a special thank you to Fantasy Lo-Fi for providing the music for this episode. You can find them on YouTube at Fantasy Lo-Fi or on Spotify under Bits and Hits. Be sure to show them some love as their music does truly bring this journey to life. Once again, thank you for joining us on Tides of Lore, and we will see you next week.